بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to resume our study of ninth section of إشارات. We said after the station of Al-Irada, now we have الرياضة, which is a kind of self-training, self-exercise or self-disciplining. And we already studied the text by Ibn Sina. And we said that Riyadha is for three major reasons. One was تنهية ما دون الحق عن مستن الإيثار, to keep away, to push away anything lower than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, lower than the absolute truth from your choice. So you don't choose anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one reason, one purpose for Riyadha. The second was تطويع النفس الأمارة للنفس المطمئنة, to make nafs ammara obedient to nafs mutma'inna, to the tranquil soul. And in this way, the faculty responsible for khayal, for imagination, or wahm, which we said it is something for understanding internal or inner particular things, like fear, like joy, like friendship, like enmity. This is something that even animals have. If we said, for example, a mouse understand that a cat is enemy, but not in a general or universal way, but feels through the instinct, feels a negative relation with a cat. So with Riyadha, you can make sure that your nafs ammara is obedient to nafs mutma'inna, and khayal and wahm are under control of aql. And number three, the purpose, which is the last purpose, taltif wa sirr litanabbuh, to make your inner self subtle and gentle and make it able to understand subtle things, which is very important. Otherwise we will miss many messages and many inspirations. And then Ibn Sina said that for the first purpose, which was تنهية ما دون الحق and مستن الإيثار, what helps is real zuhd. And real zuhd for Arif means to choose Allah above everything. Although we said zuhd in the way that zuhad also understand, which is not to go after dunya, that also helps. For number two, Ibn Sina said few things help. Al-ibadatu al-mashfu'atu bil-fikrah, worship accompanied by fikrah, thinking, contemplation. Not ibadah without thinking and contemplation, which is just a body or form of ibadah without a spirit. Ibadah with understanding, with presence of heart, with thinking. Number two, al-alhanul mustakhdima liquwa an-nafs, those kind of voices that can take under their control the faculties of nafs. So they have deep influence and control with respect to nafs. They can divert your attention from other things and focus on what is said. But if it was said just as a text, didn't have this impact. But that text with this beautiful voice, with this influencing voice, can have big impact. And then if there is an eloquent word of a preacher who is pure and uses eloquent word, talks with wisdom and has nice tone. That also is very important. And then with respect to the third purpose, what is needed for taltif was-sir, he said al-fikr al-latif, which is subtle, thinking and contemplation. So alhamdulillah, we had this already. I just wanted to give you a quick reminder, although you mashallah know already and you don't need reminder, but I just thought maybe if someone missed. Now we go to the commentary by Khaja rahmatullah alayh, and Khaja first explains a few words and then goes to the commentary. أقول مستن الإيثار means طريقته, the path of إيثار. So تنهية الحق, تنهية ما دون الحق, pushing away anything lower than حق, and مستن الإيثار, and طريق الإيثار means you don't choose it, you push it away from being preferred or chosen over God. مشفوعة, العبادة المشفوعة بالفكرة. مشفوعة, شافعة means pair. مشفوعة means accompanied by. المقرونة. These are not difficult things. كلام رخيم. رخيم means رقيق, with tenderness and gentleness. رخم صوته أي لينه, made it soft. والشمال الخلق وجمعه شمائل. We said شمائل المعشوق. We said we need a kind of love, but this love is because of the beautiful traits of character and khulq of ma'shuq, not for example, color of the skin of a human being. Now let's go to the commentary. المقصود من هذا الفصل ذكر احتياج المريد إلى الرياضة. Murid needs riyada. This is why I said last week that riyada even helps with irada. It's not that you finish everything with irada and go to riyada. No. You need riyada to strengthen your irada. وبيان أغراض or بيان أغراض الرياضة. ذكر احتياج المريد إلى الرياضة وبيان أغراض الرياضة. What is the purpose or what are the purposes for رياضة. وأنا أذكر قبل الخوض في التفسير ماهية الرياضة. Khaja rahmatullah alayhi says, before getting involved and engaged and immersing in discussion about tafsir of what Ibn Sina said, I say something about mahiyat al-riyada. So, أنا أذكر ماهية الرياضة قبل الخوض في التفسير. He has brought قبل before, but he means this. So before getting into tafsir, I want to mention ماهية الرياضة. What is the nature of رياضة? فأقول رياضة البهائم, as we said last week, in Arabic, we said many terms initially start with material, physical usage. Riyada initially is used for training animals. منعها عن إقدامها على حركات لا يرتضيها الرائض. To stop animals from motions that the trainer doesn't want, is not happy with. For example, this horse wants to go very fast, wants to, go away, wants to, for example, not carry anything. with Riyadha, you tame and train the horse to do only things that the person who is Ra'id, who is giving Riyadha, who is training the horse and taming the horse wants. وإجبارها على ما يرتضي. So منعها, stop it from doing what he doesn't want, the trainer doesn't want, and forcing it to do what he wants. لتتمرن على طاعته, so that he would get used to. Tamarrun means to get used to. It's like exercise, to get used to. Obedience to the ra'id, to the person who is training this horse, for example, or whatever animal is. القوة الحيوانية التي هي مبدأ الإدراكات والأفاعيل الحيوانية في الإنسان إذا لم يكن لها طاعة القوة العاقلة ملكة كانت بمنزلة بهيمة غير مرتاضة. Very important statement by Khaja, which is of course agreed by other Muslim philosophers. القوة الحيوانية. You know, human beings have different stages. We have nafs nabati, we have nafs haywani, and then we have nafs natiqah. So we are a kind of nabat, means living being. We share something with vegetables, with trees, flowers. We are also an animal, a type of animal, but we have something more. So don't be surprised if we say there is qawwiyya haywani in us, and there are af'al haywani in us. There are animal actions in us, because part of us is animal. Some human beings unfortunately remain at this level, but other human beings ascend. So al-quwwatul hayawaniyya, the animal faculty in human being, which is the origin of idrakat wal afa'il al-haywaniyya, those understandings, perceptions and actions which are haywani, which are animal actions and understandings in human beings. If obedience to aql is not a permanent quality, is not a malaka, if qawwiyya aqila is not controlling qawwiyya haywaniyya permanently as a malaka. You remember we said malaka is when you have a established permanent quality. It's not something just comes and goes. It's not hal. It's not, you know, very transient or temporary situation. It's almost permanent. Of course, malaka can also change. I have always said, when we say permanent, doesn't mean that it cannot be changed, but it means almost permanent unless you do something serious to stop it. Like malakatul shaja'a, an act of shaja'a. Malakatul sakhawa, an act of sakhawa. To be brave, to be generous. Sometimes an action, sometimes for a few minutes, few moments, a few hours, you are brave, you are generous, you are kind. But if it becomes malaka, means it is your condition. It continues unless there is a radical and fundamental change. So if qawwiyya haywani has not obedience to qawwiyya aqila as a malaka, as a permanent quality, means either doesn't obey at all, or even if it obeys sometimes qawwiyya aqila, it is occasional, not always. If this is the case, كانت بمنزلة بهيمة غير مرتاضة, then it is like that animal inside us is like a horse which is not tamed. There is an animal inside us You can tame it and put it at the service of aql, and aql can use this horse. It's very good markab, very good vehicle for aql. We need this quwwa al-haywaniyah, but at the service of aql. But if this horse becomes the governor and the ruler, and that is the horse also which is not tamed, the wild horse in us, or other kinds of animals which are in us, if they become leader and in charge, then that's the problem. So this قوة حيوانية كانت بمنزلة بهيمة غير مرتاضة. If it is not constantly obedient to aql, it's like an animal which is not trained. تدعوها شهوتها تارة وغضبها تارة. Sometimes it is called by shahwa, appetites, lusts. Sometimes by ghadab, by anger. اللتان تثيرهما المتخيلة والمتوهمة. And these shahwa and ghadab are triggered, provoked by khayal and wahm, not by aql. If they are by aql, for example, something that your aql says it is good and then you like to have it. Something your aql says it's a threat and then you have ghadab towards it, that's good. But if it is through khayal and wahm, like an animal, then it is very much uncontrolled. You think of something and then you very much want it, or you very much, are afraid of it, are frightened by it. Wahm and khayal can kill us, really. Not, I'm saying physically, although sometimes physically also, because many people who do suicide, etc., is because of wahm and khayal. But also they can kill our spirituality, can kill our even mental health. We suffer a lot from our khayal being under no control. It makes something very important. Another thing which is very important makes it look not important. It's just khayal. Or for example, sometimes people fall in love and then you see there is only khayal, has imagined in that person things that that person doesn't have. And then after some time it becomes hatred, because then imagining that person bad things that that person doesn't have. Maybe if in the beginning there was no exaggeration, now also there was no problem. But goes up to a sky and then goes up to the asfalu safilin. This is because of khayal. It's very dangerous. May Allah help us to control our khayal and wahm. بسبب ما تتذكرانه تارة. Sometimes the قوة متخيلة وقوة متوهمة trigger this shahwa and ghadab because of what they remember. Something comes to them, occurs. وبسبب ما يتعدى إليهما من الحواس الظاهرة. And sometimes because of what comes to them from external senses. Sometimes you are sitting and something comes to your mind. Sometimes you are seeing something. You hear something, you smell something, and they bring ghadab or shahwa. تارة إلى ملائمها فتتحرك حركات مختلفة حيوانية. Then what comes, sometimes it's something which is pleasant for this قوة, so shahwa comes. And then after that this person makes animal motions, goes towards that thing, walks there, or tries to eat that thing or drink that thing or touch something, or do something just to get that shahwa satisfied. بسبب تلك الدواعي, because of those motives. Then what happens is, instead of listening to aql, now employs aql and takes aql at his own service, uses aql in order to satisfy his shahwa or his anger. So aql is no longer a guide. Aql has become a servant, and they use aql to use whatever is available in the best way or easiest way for satisfaction of their shahwa or ghadab. وتستخدم القوة العاقلة في تحصيل مراداتها, uses the faculty which is responsible for rationality and understanding in order to gain what wants. فتكون هي أمارة, so nafs, or it is قوة, become commanding. تصدر عنها أفعال مختلفة المبادئ, actions which have different origins would be issued from this. والعقلية مؤتمرة, these قواي واهمة and خيالية which are حيواني, they become أمارة, they command, and عقل becomes مؤتمرة. Tamara means to take the command, to accept the command. Amara ya'tamiru or naha yantahi. Naha means to prohibit, yantahi means to stop, means you accept the prohibition, implement it. Amara ya'tamiru. Wal aqliyatu mu'tamira an kurhin. It's not that aql wants this, but aql has become obedient and kurhin, with force, by compulsion. Ikrah, that is kurh, doesn't want but has, it's imprisoned. Aqli maghlub, aql is defeated and is imprisoned. Wa mudtaribah, and aql is mudtariba, aql is not tranquil, aql is now disturbed and stressful. أما إذا راضتها القوة العاقلة, but if قوة عاقلة can train and discipline this قوة حيوانية بمنعها عن التخيلات والتوهمات والإحساسات والأفاعيل المثيرة للشهوة والغضب, by stopping قوة حيوانية from تخيلات, from توهمات, from إحساسات, perceptions which are causing shahwa and ghadab, looking at something which is not good, hearing something which is not good, smelling something which is not good, or actions which are triggering shahwa and ghadab, going to some places, watching something. So if aql manages to do riyadha of قوة حيوانية بمنعها عن التخيلات والتوهمات and وإجبارها, and instead of going after those things says no, don't go after those things, and then إجبارها forces قوة حيوانية على ما يقتضيه العقل العملي, and says that you have to do what practical intellect tells you, what is wise for you to do. إلى أن تصير متمرنة على طاعته, to the extent that قوة حيواني then get used to obeying عقل. متأدبة, now it has the adab, it is disciplined and has the manner of serving عقل. تأتمر بأمرها, takes the command from عقل. وتنتهي بنهيها, when عقل prohibits, this accepts and stops. If this happens, then كانت العقلية مطمئنة, then قوة عقلية is no longer مضطربة, is مطمئنة, it becomes tranquil. ولا يصدر عنها أفعال مختلفة بحسب المبادئ, and then it would not be that it would do different actions because of different origins, different thoughts comes and he does different things. There is tranquility, and then there would be a pattern, there would be a stability, there would be consistency, there would be predictability. If things are the same, he would act the same. وباقي القوى بأسرها مؤتمرة, and other things, قوة خيالية, قوة واهمة, all become obedient. مستسلمة لها, they are surrendering to قوة عاقلة. وبين الحالتين حالات مختلفة, between these two poles, to have قوة حيوانية completely in charge or قوة عاقلة completely in charge, between these two poles, these two sides of the spectrum, we can have different degrees, closer to this end or closer to that end or in middle.
بحمدك يا إلهي بدأت قولي وجئتك خاضعا.
وبين الحالتين حالات مختلفة بحسب استيلاء إحداها على الأخرى, depending on whether قوة حيوانية is dominant over عاقلة or عاقلة is dominant over حيوانية, how much, 60%, 40%, 90%, 10%, so you have different degrees. تتبع الحيوانية فيها أحيانا هواها, sometimes قوة حيوانية follows its own appetites and desires. Hawa means desire. عاصية للعاقلة, and disobeys قوة عاقلة. ثم تندم فتلوم نفسها, but sometimes then regrets and blames itself, and then this is why it is called نفس لوامة, فتكون لوامة, would be blaming. وإنما سميت هذه القوى بالنفوس, the reason these قوة حيوانية, قوة عاقلة, and degrees between them are called نفس أمارة, نفس لوامة, نفس مطمئنة, is because this is the way they are mentioned in the text, in the scripture. إنما سميت هذه القوى بالنفوس الأمارة, بالنفوس, نفوس is plural, بالنفوس الأمارة means بالنفس الأمارة, والنفس اللوامة, والنفس المطمئنة. So instead of repeating نفس, says بالنفوس الأمارة واللوامة والمطمئنة. So why these are called with these names? ملاحظة لما جاء من ذكرها بهذه السمات في التنزيل الإلهي, considering what has come from their mention with these names, with these labels in divine revelation. So because Quran has nafs al-lawwama, la uqsimu bin nafs al-lawwama. Quran has nafs ammara, la ubarra'u nafsi inna ma ubarra'u nafsi inna nafs al-ammaratun bis-su' la ma rahima rabbi. Quran has nafs mutma'inna, ya ayyatuha an-nafs al-mutma'inna irji'i ila rabbik. So because of that, they have used these terms. فَإِذَنْ رِيَاضَةُ النَّفْسِ نَهْيُهَا عَنْ هَوَاهَا. So what is رِيَاضَةُ النَّفْسِ? رِيَاضَةُ النَّفْسِ is to stop nafs from going after her desires and whims. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَى. نَهَى النَّفْسِ. One of the big problems that we have with the liberal culture today is that they don't believe in نَهَى النَّفْسِ عَنِ هَوَاهَا. They say, you just go after your desires. Just satisfy your desires. Do what you like. Enjoy yourself. And there is no limit for this. The only thing is that be careful not to get into trouble. Otherwise, you can do everything. This is against any kind of spirituality, any kind of discipline, any kind of routine, any kind of organization, any kind of social order. Because if people are encouraged to do whatever they like, sooner or later everything will collapse. The reason we have not, as humanity, collapsed, because it's not that everyone endorses that idea. So they are taking advantage of other people being committed. Otherwise, if everyone was doing whatever they like, then it would be a disastrous world, even if it's remaining. So, رِيَاضَةُ النَّفْسِ نَهْيُهَا عَنْ هَوَاهَا وَأَمْرُهَا بِطَاعَةِ مَوْلَاهَا is to command nafs to obey his master or her master. وَلَمَّا كَانَتِ الْأَغْرَاضُ الْعَقْلِيَّةُ مُخْتَلِفَةً كَانَتِ الرِّيَاضَاتُ مُخْتَلِفَةً. Because our intellectual purposes are different, we have different things to achieve, then riyadat are also different. منها الرياضات العقلية المذكورة في الحكمة العملية. Among them, there are some riyadat, intellectual riyadat, which are mentioned in practical wisdom. When you study practical wisdom like akhlaq, they tell you some of the things that you have to do there. Like, for example, contemplation, like thinking, like asking questions, discussion, etc. These are riyadat al-aqliyah. Not accepting without reason, not to be pressured by, majority or a rude and forceful minority. So these are riyadat aqliyah. وَمِنْهَا الرِّيَاضَاتُ السَّمْعِيَّةِ. And there are things which are heard, means they are from revelation, from scripture, from Quran and Sunnah. And these are our ibadat al-shar'iyyah, al-musammat bil-ibadat al-shar'iyyah. Ibadah is also riyada. Salat is a very good riyada. Makes you punctual, makes you organized, makes you united with other mu'mineen, makes you focused, and connects you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأَدَقُّ أَصْنَافِهَا رِيَاضَةُ الْعَارِفِينَ. But the most precise and the most the finest of them is رياضة العارفين. لأنهم يريدون وجه الله تعالى لا غير. Because they have the highest aim. They seek face of God and nothing else. They are not even after heaven or being saved from hell. No, it's too little. وَكُلُّ مَا سِوَاهُ شَاغِلٌ عَنْ. Why the Riyaza is the most difficult and the finest? Because anything other than Allah, شَاغِلٌ عَنْ, would make you preoccupied so that you don't focus on your relation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يَشْغَلُكُمْ عَنْهُ. شَاغِلٌ عَنْ means makes you busy so that you don't pay attention to Wajhullah. You become too preoccupied. So what is then رياضة العارفين؟ فرياضتهم منع النفس عن الالتفات إلى ما سوى الحق الأول. The Riyaza is to stop nafs from iltifat, not obeying, even paying attention to ma sawa al-haq is to be stopped. For Arif, tawajjuh, attention, dhikr is the most important thing. And forgetfulness and ghaflah are the most destructive thing. Action comes later. All the barakat and blessings come from zikr, from attention to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But of course this attention is positive, kind attention, not the attention that you have to an enemy. Because sometimes you have an enemy and you are fighting, you have attention all the time to your enemy. This is not what we are talking about. This is positive attention with love, attention with openness of the heart. So رياضتهم رياضة العارفين منع النفس عن الالتفات إلى ما سوى الحق الأول, to stop nafs from paying attention to anything other than the first haq, ultimate haq. وإجبارها على التوجه نحو, not to pay attention to anything else, and to force your nafs to do tawajjuh, to pay attention to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, first you need to do ijbar, to train and tame. Later it becomes malaka and loves to pay attention and automatically pays attention. And if no one stop, wants to go to that attention. Even when people talk to him, still keeps the attention. ليصير الإقبال عليه والانقطاع عما دونه ملكة لها. So that iqbal towards haq and being disconnected and detached from anything lower than haq becomes malaka for nafs, a permanent quality for nafs. وظاهر أن كل رياضة هي داخلة في الحقيقة في هذه الرياضة. So it is clear that any riyadha for Arif indeed comes under this. ولا ينعكس, but it's not the other way around. You cannot say any riyadha has this kind of riyadha. No, because this is the highest riyadha. It's not, for example, necessarily salat or fasting, other things involve this top riyadha. This top riyadha is like 100. When you have 100, you have 90, you have 80, you have 70. But when you have 70 or 80 or 90, you don't have 100. إلا أنها تختلف باختلاف مراتبهم في سلوكهم. But other riyadat, of course, depending on the level of urafa and degrees that they have in their suluk, in their wayfaring, other riyazat come. تبتدئ من أجل أصنافها وتنتهي عند أدقها. It starts from the biggest one and ends with the finest one. دقيق, very precise. Okay. فهذا ما أقوله في الرياضة. Khaja says, this is what I say about رياضة. You remember we said قبل الخوض في التفسير, let us talk about ماهية الرياضة. This is what Khaja wanted to say about ماهية الرياضة, and very beautifully he explained the origin of the riyada, which is for animals, and then he applied it to the case of قوة حيوانية, which is influenced by khayal and wahm, and said, that we have to make aql in charge, and this is mentioned in the Quran as nafs mutma'innah, which is full control of aql. On the other side, nafs ammare, and in between we have nafs al-lawwamah, and other things that Khaja rahmatullah alayh mentioned. Now, arji'u ila al-maqsood. Now I go back to what we wanted to say. فأقول الغرض الأقصى من الرياضة شيء واحد. The highest, the ultimate end with respect to riyada is one thing. هو نيل الكمال الحقيقي, is to reach real perfection, which is to reach the highest degree of perfection possible for human beings. We cannot become like Allah, who is really perfect, absolutely perfect, but we can reach that level which is possible for us. إلا أن ذلك موقوف على حصول أمر وجوده. But reaching that real perfection depends on an existential matter to happen. You must have استعداد. استعداد, if you want to just quickly translate, you can say readiness. But in philosophy we have lots of discussion about استعداد and what is the difference between قوة and كيف استعدادي, potentiality, and كيف استعدادي, which is existential, which has degrees, it has اشتداد. I don't want to go to that discussion now, but basically you can say we need some kind of preparedness before you get something. You need to be prepared for that. You need to be ready for that. And this is not a matter of likelihood or probability. There must be something you for example, a seed of apple can become apple, but there is something in seed of apple that makes it later apple. There is a istidad. Seed of apple cannot become orange because it doesn't have that istidad. Although it's not impossible that a seed of apple becomes orange after maybe some transformation, some a long process. It's possible, but it's not prepared for that. Therefore, it would take lots of cycles to reach that. But for seed of apple to become apple, it's very easy. If there is a good environment and there is no overriding factor, it becomes easily apple. So, حصول ذلك الأمر مشروط بزوال الموانع. When there is استعداد for something, that thing happens if there is no مانع, if there is no obstacle. والموانع إما خارجية وإما داخلية. to make it simple for you, I'm oversimplifying maybe, but just for sake of understanding, this seed of apple, in order to become apple, there must be no obstacle. Internal obstacle, like for example, this seed is spoiled, is corrupt. External, like for example, a bird comes and eats this seed, or the offshoot that comes. This is external. Or there is no water, for example, it dries. فإذن الرياضة بهذا الاعتبار موجهة نحو ثلاثة أغراض. Now that you understood that we want to reach that perfection, and this needs having no internal and external obstacle, now you can understand why Riyadha has three purposes. أحدها تنحية ما دون الحق عن مستن الإيثار. To push away, to keep away anything other than haq from your choice. This means إزالة الموانع الخارجية, to remove external obstacles. You don't let anything becomes your aim, your ideal, preoccupies your mind and heart. والثاني تطويع النفس الأمارة للمطمئنة لينجذب التخيل والتوهم عن الجانب السفلي إلى الجانب القدسي ويتبعها سائر القوى ضرورة. This is the second thing that Ibn Sina had said, to make nafs ammara obedient to nafs mutma'inna, so that takhayyul and wahm are under control, and instead of taking us to the alam al-sifli, we take it to janib qudsi, to the holy direction. This means idalatul mawani' al-dakhiliya. So the second thing that Ibn Sina said, it's about removing internal obstacles. أعني الدواعي الحيوانية المذكورة. So you don't pay attention to others, anything other than Allah, that is not to let anything externally to become obstacle. You don't let your wahm and khayal control you. This means you don't let internal obstacles to be there. الثالث تلطيف السر للتنبه, to make your inner self soft and gentle for being alert and very much receptive. وهو تحصيل الاستعداد لنيل الكمال. This means to achieve preparedness and readiness for reaching perfection. فإن مناسبة السر مع الشيء اللطيف, because suitability of inner self with شيء اللطيف لا تمكن إلا بتلطيفه. If you want to reach, to receive something latif, you have to make yourself also latif. This is why Urafa, at the same time that they are very strong, they are very brave, very determined, but they have very soft heart. Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam, who was a very brave person, the bravest person of his time, after Rasulullah, and when Rasulullah passed away, the bravest person at that time, when sees a child, an orphan, that heart is affected. If he sees thousands of enemies in front of him, he's not affected. But a child who is orphan and needs help brings a big change in the heart of Amir al-Mu'minin. Or when he, for example, reads Quran, again big change happens in the heart. So there is a strength, but there is also softness. The heart is not hard. If it was hard, if there was na'uzu billah qasawatul qalb, then okay, always the same. But the beauty of awliyaullah is that they are strong, but they are not hard and harsh. They are not like a stone. They have very soft heart, but at the same time very strong. It's very difficult to explain unless people have seen such people or have read about such people, that how can someone not be afraid of a big army of enemy, but for example even an insect which is in danger would affect them and they want to help that insect, let alone a human being. So taltif was-sir is very important, because then with this taltif was-sir they can have good dreams, they can receive inspirations, they can have good thoughts and other things. فإن مناسبة السر مع الشيء اللطيف لا تمكن إلا بتلطيفه. If sir is going to be suitable for subtle things, then you have to soften and make subtle. Taltif means to make latif. باب تفعيل. واللطف السر عبارة عن تهيئه. When nafs is prepared, then it has that latafa. Prepared for what? عن تهيئه لأن تتمثل فيه الصور العقلية بسرعة، ولأن ينفعل عن الأمور الإلهية المبهجة للشوق والوجد بسهولة. This nafs is soft, is very receptive, very gentle, so can get intellectual forms quickly. Intellectual forms, like for example ideas, can come to this nafs and affect this nafs. Receives, and it's good reception here. And also things which are ilahi, which are divine affairs, they can affect them. They easily accept. Infial means to accept. So they accept divine affairs which give joy very easily, بسهولة. Very receptive. It's like, for example, if you have a teacher, and if your nafs is latif and is tuned to the teacher, teacher says one word, you understand. Even with a glimpse of eye, with a finger gesture, gives you something as a message and you understand. But those who are not prepared, you have to explain many times, and maybe even at the end still they don't understand. ثم إن الشيخ لما فرغ من ذكر أغراض الرياضة ذكر ما يعين على الوصول إلى كل واحد من هذه الأغراض. Okay, after mentioning these three purposes for Riyadha, Sheikh mentioned what helps with each of these three. Inshallah, we discuss this in the next week. Those things which help with the first and second and third purpose, inshallah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.